science can't really tell us what the meaning of life is. It's just, we don't have access to that. But science can tell us what drives meaning in life. So if you ask somebody, is your life meaningful? They'll say yes or no. And then you can ask them, what makes your life meaningful? And they'll give you answers. And those answers are relatively consistent, right? Social relationships are a huge driver of the sense of meaning in life for everybody. So through our workshops, what we've fundamentally come to believe is there's sort of 4 fundamental relationships that you need to be connected. So I'll back up for a second. So I brought up social relationships. The general idea is that meaning in life is about your connectedness, how connected you are. And we can think of that as like, okay, you have connection, but also what's the depth and sophistication of that connection? So what we've discovered through our workshops is that there's fundamentally 4, you can divide it up and say 5 relationships that give meaning to life. So the first one are the relationships that are internal to the self. So you can think of this as the mind-body relationship, or the relationships between the aspects of the body, the emotions and the mind. Plato talked about the man, which is the rational mind, the lion, which is like the social aspect of the mind, and then the monster, which are the underlying innate urges. And those have to be integrated. And you can think of the monster as many different monsters, like the lust monster and the anger monster aren't the same monster. But somehow all those things have to that multiplicity has to come into unity. And it can have better unity. And it can have more sophisticated, more connected, more depth, more bandwidth flowing between the different aspects of the self, better coordination, right? Just like you can have better hand-eye coordination. You can have better mind-emotion coordination. So that's the first layer. But a self, and this is where like the embodiment world and the somatic world, I think they get stuck. And I think that it often kind of gets inverted in a way that's not actually helpful, because the body mind isn't designed to operate in isolation. You can sit and do Vipassana for hours. You can lay down and do body scans. You can do Feldenkrais, and you can just simply remain a totally incompetent human being. And no matter how good you are at like feeling the integration of yourself in being this incompetent, weak, fragile human being, you're still going to be a weak, fragile, incompetent human being when you step off the mat. So you're a body mind. You're embodied in an environment. You're embedded in that environment. What is your relationship to that environment? What kind of affordances for action do you have? What have you cultivated? Can you run, jump, climb, lift, carry, build, cook, dance, right? All those things. As you build your motor capacity to move through the environment, to operate on the environment, to build things, to make things, you are increasing your connectedness. You're increasing your true knowledge of the world. And through that, of yourself. And so you can divide that into the things that we move through, the locomotive aspects, and the things that we can work with, which is the manipulative aspects. But fundamentally, they're both aspects of the physical environment. Then there's the social and relational environment. How well can you connect to other people? What's the depth of your capacity to communicate, the depth of your capacity to engage empathy, right? It's the depth of your capacity to articulate your thoughts. And then there is the transcendent factors, right? This has been really late for me, really hard for me to accept, because spirituality was a big source of bullshit in the communities that I grew up in. But I think it's fundamentally true that like anger is a kind of force that precedes us. Anger didn't start the first time you got mad. It exists in everybody. So it's a kind of force that you have to be. It's a principle that you have to be in right relationship to, in a sort of general way. And then anytime that you get a group of agents together, there's a kind of collective intelligence that comes out of that that's beyond them. If you've been on a sports team, it's like there's a spirit to that team that's not localizable in any one agent. And you should have it, right? Like the idea of school spirit is like this seems like super dumb now, but it's real. It's real because there's ways in which information and emotion transfers through this big neural net of human beings that are the same as how they transfer through the neural net that's your mind, and you're impacted by it. Everyone is sort of floating around in this culture space. So what's your relationship to the transcendent forces? What, like an old school Christian perspective, you might call the powers and principalities that we live within. So you need to have, meaning in life comes from good connectedness and greater increasing depth of connectedness to these 4 or 5 fundamental factors. And we believe that to achieve that, you need practices. You need practices that intentionally help you cultivate your capacities in that. And those are something like a somatic and structural practice, something like a locomotive exploratory practice like parkour, some kind of manipulative practice, which could be, the fundamental things that all children do is just play with balls and sticks and ropes and dolls, right? But that becomes, can you make fire? Can you shoot a bow and arrow? Can you craft a table? And then, can you connect well to other people? And that starts with nursing as a baby. It becomes rough and tumble play. And then it's only out of that the dialogical, the storytelling, all that other stuff develops. And we don't understand that. And we've actually cut ourselves off from the primal aspects. We say, don't climb that, not realizing that's how we learn the world. So don't wrestle, because we don't realize that's how we actually begin to deeply attune to another human nervous system. And so we don't understand why we can't talk to each other in this culture, right? But we're just basically really fragile and poorly mapped and incapable of deep understanding of each other, and incapable of deep understanding of ourselves, because we haven't gone through the fundamental developmental tools that precede the ability to even do philosophy. This is why I bring up the Greeks, and the gymnasia precedes philosophia, because we remember Socrates and his words, but we don't remember the practices that gave rise to them.